and Jewish World Watch's own Naama Haviv. You'll join me on the panel, please. We're going to have a little conversation between the panelists and then open it up to questions from all of you. And with no further ado, please help us welcome Congresswoman Karen Bass.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the invitation to come here this evening. I just want to begin by really thanking Jewish World Watch for the work that you do in the Congo and Sudan. Your efforts against genocide is just really critical, and the other organizations that are here as well. You play such an important role in Congress. I know you know that, but you know there's 435 of us in the House, and there's 10,000 issues on any given day. And you know, a lot of times we have to fight for issues related to Africa, number one, to resonate up enough for members of Congress to want to do something about. But one of the things that's so critical when it comes to Africa is, in so many folks' opinion, they just kind of do this and just feel like, you know what, it's too overwhelming, I can't deal with it. And it's just so critical to say that yes, there are issues, but yes, there is also hope, there is solutions here, there are pathways out of this. And that's what you bring to the table. You highlight the problems, but you also come with solutions, and it's very critical, and I thank you very much for what you do. And just a little bit of background. I just wanted to comment on a few things, and then you've given me questions, and I wanted to respond to those questions. For me, I'm in my 4th year in Congress, finishing up my 2nd term, and one of the reasons why I was very excited to go to Congress was I could focus on Africa-related issues. Many, many years ago, I was one of those activists here in Los Angeles when there was an anti-apartheid movement, when everybody was not just focusing on South Africa, but the former colonies as they fought for liberation. And I was a part of that movement. And then when crack cocaine, frankly, hit our inner cities, I stopped doing international work because things then felt overwhelming here in the United States. And so then going back to going to Congress allowed me to get back in the international arena, and I'm extremely excited about that. And so I do serve on the Africa subcommittee, and I serve as the lead Democrat. But you know, my focus on Africa, and again, this is why I'm so appreciative of the work that you do, is not on the conflicts, but is actually on business development and trade, something, especially given my activist background, I would have never thought I would have focused on. But the fact of the matter is that we need to change the way we look at the continent. There's so much education that needs to take place in our own country, educating our own citizens that Africa is not a country, that Africa is a continent, and Africa is not the size of Texas. People really don't understand, which is why when you run into Africans and you say, "Where are you from?" they say Africa, because they're sure that you have no idea what country they're from. Anyway, there's a lot of education work that we need to do within our own population, and changing the paradigm from which we view the continent and focusing on trade and not aid, and looking at how we invest. One of the questions that was asked of me was about China and whether or not the United States is late. I think we're very late to the party. Our view of Africa is still from the point of view of aid. And I'm not saying aid, of course aid is important, but you have countries around the world who understand that 7 out of the 10 fastest growing economies on the planet are taking place on the continent of Africa. You have Brazil, you have China, you have India, you have all of these countries that are investing billions of dollars while we're still trying to figure it out. So my focus these next couple of years is on the reauthorization and hopefully expansion of the African Growth and Opportunity Act. That is the vehicle from which the United States trades with the continent. But I will tell you that that's fine. I think it's important to have, but there's a lot of challenges there, because mainly it's been the oil industry and the textile industries that have been the major industries that have taken advantage of AGOA. I think it's very important to have, but we have to figure out how to strengthen it and expand it so that many more countries can take advantage of it, because right now it's only a handful. And one of the problems that Africa faces, as was mentioned in the legislation that was passed, Power Africa. Power Africa is not an aid bill. Power Africa really is promoting a public-private partnership so that we can develop the infrastructure, we can help develop the infrastructure in Africa. Thinking of 50 plus countries, 1 billion people, and 2/3 of the continent does not have electricity. It's shocking. Imagine giving childbirth, delivering a baby in the dark with a cell phone light, to illuminate the birth. So having electricity, having roads, period, having railroads, the trade between the countries on the continent is difficult because the colonial era that in some countries you have to fly to France to get to another country on the continent because you can't fly, depending on the country that you're talking about. So it's those type things that I'm focused on, the trade barriers that exist between countries so that Africa as a whole develops the type of infrastructure so that if you have a policy like AGOA, you can have many more U.S. businesses taking advantage of that. Again, from my background in promoting U.S. multinational involvement, odd. But you know what though? I mean, it was interesting. I kind of had to go consult Barbara Lee on this because it felt so strange. But the fact of the matter is, we have a history in this country of organizing movements when our companies don't act right. Whether it was the Gulf boycott, the Mobil boycott, the Nestle boycott, whatever. I mean, we have the capacity here, if we organize, to promote our companies to be involved, but then to hold them accountable. And so if you think of Chinese companies, and a lot of them are state-owned, the level of accountability, I'm not sure it's there at all. So anyway, that's a lot of the work that I'm doing now. In regard to the questions that I was asked about countries in the region and the roles that they're playing, I do think that you were seeing positive leadership from Angola. Obviously, there are the ongoing issues with Uganda and Rwanda. I was just there for the commemoration of the genocide in Rwanda. And I do have to say that many Jewish organizations, and I'm not sure if Jewish World Watch is involved in this, but many organizations have worked with Rwanda to document the genocide in some pretty unbelievable ways. But anyway, the contradiction that Rwanda and Uganda hold, it's going to be interesting when we have the summit here in August, because the presidents of those countries, I am sure, are going to be invited. The ceasefire that took place that we hope will hold, and part of that was the special envoy Russ Feingold's leadership, along with obviously others and other countries. A question was asked about whether or not Feingold has been able to make a difference, and I do think that he has. I'm not so sure I would say that he's changed U.S. policies, but I do think that he has been able to make a difference and has played a role in brokering that ceasefire. I know that his primary focus in 2014 is focusing on the elections that are due to take place in the DRC, that we all hope take place in the DRC. In 2015, it would be nice to think that Kabila would step down, but we will see whether or not he does that. It has been the tendency in a number of different countries for the constitution to be changed at the last minute and presidents to stay for third terms. And then I was asked about bipartisan legislation. I'm one of the fortunate ones. Obviously, I'm a staunch Democrat, but I have always worked very well with my Republican colleagues. I did in Sacramento, and I do in Washington, D.C. as well. We're very fortunate that on the Foreign Affairs Committee we have the leadership of Ed Royce, Republican from Orange County, who has conducted the committee in a very bipartisan way. We oftentimes don't even vote because things are unanimous consent out of that committee. And so when the question was asked how we were able to do the resolution, it's because Africa is a bipartisan issue. Africa is, and a couple of the other issues that I work on are very bipartisan issues. But, and so that's how we were able to get the resolution done. And I hope that that's will allow us to get a GOA reauthorized in a timely manner. It expires in September. The culture in Congress is if it expires in September, you wait until August. I'm really trying to fight against that. And your efforts could be extremely helpful in that, helping to say, you know, it really harms our relationships with the continent to wait until the last minute. And let me just conclude by saying that, you know, it is so critical that we pay attention to the various crises that are taking place, whether you're looking at, you know, we left from Rwanda and went to Burundi, and Burundi is just a powder keg, you know, which could explode next year, whether they decide to have their elections or not. And then we went to the Central African Republic, so it was like going from one country where there was a genocide, another country that could have a genocide next year, and another one that was potentially in the midst of one right now. And it is very important that we do pay attention to this, but we have just got to broaden it out so that the psyche of our country begins to see the continent of Africa for what it is. If the only thing they know about are crisis after crisis, then I really believe this kind of mentality when it comes to Africa will remain. It's wonderful to see the concern over the missing girls and Boko Haram. Now that Boko Haram is on everybody's agenda, even though we know that they have been a reign of terror for several years now, it's very important. But at the same time as we lift the stories of the crises, we need to lift the stories of the success. Thank you very much.
Pastor Kasuik, I'd like to invite you to respond to some of the Congresswoman's comments.
Thank you, Honorable Bass. It's a really great honor to be sitting close to where you are. Yes, I had a privilege of going to your office once with Jewish World Watch, but you were not there abusing the floor. And thank you also, Jewish World Watch, for organizing this. This is really a big privilege. We are so thankful for that. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Just want to touch on a few things, reminding you what you already know, but sometimes reminding people things is quite an important thing. It's how we learn. Wanted to just talk about the impact of violence in Congo. Just a little bit. Impact because it's a vast and vast, subject that we can talk about in 4 or 5 minutes. I want to mention 4 of them right now, and then I will conclude by really responding to what Congresswoman Bass has just said. One is the destruction of the family life in Congo. You may know that really the kind of cruelty that Congolese people experience is way beyond what we can imagine. Sometimes women are buried alive just only because they cried over their husband or wives or children who had been killed for whatever reasons. And some are even hanged, women, on sticks going through their bodies. That is a total destruction of their bodies. And sometimes the killing of family members one after another in the presence of either the oldest or the youngest or whatever way they want to decide to do it. And many times burning villages and houses with people inside. That's one aspect. Another impact, way they're destroying the families also by perpetuating extreme sexual violence to break the family cohesion, the community cohesion, the society cohesion, and leaving people very much dehumanized and demoralized. What I mean by demoralized is when people start looking down upon themselves and don't think that they are capable anymore of anything. And even adopting violence as a means of proving their masculinity, that regarding men, I mean, men and women, men in general. And that brings a creation of a culture of violence in the area. And that has been one aspect. And the other one is destruction of the economy and its infrastructures. The macro, the MACO, macroeconomy, is, you may know, it's well managed in the Democratic Republic of Congo by multinationals, and I'm going to respond to what Congresswoman Bass just said, through individuals and governments that are not for the Congolese people. The population and the country itself receive almost nothing from the macro economy. And then there is micro, MI, a small one, economy level. The insecurity is pushing the common citizen to abandon agricultural activities on the benefits of artisanal mining, where even minerals are detected. And yet, the artisanal mining is itself done in deplorable or inhumane conditions. And third aspect of, impact, it is the serious changes in the management of physical space of the country. By that I mean land, and also the social structures that manages the people. Close to 40% of the population of North Kivu, for instance, have lived in temporary or permanent IDPs conditions. And also, social classes are changing for the benefits of so-called occupying forces. I would want to develop that more, but in 4 minutes I will not be able to. And traditional local political and administrative leaders in Eastern Congo are being replaced by people considered to be pro-occupy forces, or simply sometimes by, I heard, foreigners. And the fourth area where violence is impacting the Congolese, or the country of Congo, is the poor relationship between people groups. There is a big phobia that all people speaking Kinyarwanda, for instance, are not Congolese, leading to serious tensions between the Rwandophones and the other Congolese native. And as Congresswoman has just said, that might be another tension that might explode to another genocide. And also the xenophobia against Rwandese people, Ugandans, and the international community led by the UN, the USA, the UK, Canada, and some other EU countries. That is really happening because of how people look at things, the way they are done, and the way what they are reaping from the violence. It brings those kind of feelings and that kind of attitude in them. I thought of talking a little bit about some suggestions for 1 minute. I would want to commend what Jewish World Watch is already doing in Congo, doing advocacy work here in the USA. That's why I have the privilege of being sitting close to Honorable Karen Bass, and that's because of Jewish World Watch. So thank you for that. It's really a good part of, many times good part of the violence happening in Congo is foreign to Congolese people. Secondly, I thought of what the Jewish World Watch is doing, rescuing one life at a time in Sudan and DRC. Also the intervention in the communities, like the construction of the Chambucha clinic, the Panzi Hospital, Heal Africa, where they are sponsoring Sons of Congo. Just give me 30 seconds, I want to finish from there. Don't worry, some of us wear these watches, they're jewelries, we don't know that. Okay, for Sons of Congo, this is what we call the Éveil des Fils du Congo. It's a ministry at the grassroots level, helping our communities to eradicate violence through reaching out to men, or the males. And over 95% of perpetrators of violence in DRC are men. So we need to go to the root of the violence, and that's what Sons of Congo is doing. And Jewish World Watch is sponsoring us with quite a lot of money that is helping us to do anything. Help men discover and construct the appropriate identity as protector of the society, and not being destructor of the society. Help men regain their creativity while setting aside their demoralization and dehumanization inherited from the wars, and also help men become community healers. That's something we are doing with Sons of Congo. And then coming to the, I think, great part of the solution, what Congresswoman had just talked about, the trade, but it should be organized a different way than the one we are experiencing in the Congo right now. Thank you.
I'd like to ask Sasha Lejnet to respond to Congresswoman Bass's comments.
Great. Okay, everyone take your eyes off of your jewelry pieces. I really try to stick to 4 minutes. So thank you so much. You know, I travel to Congo frequently and often give talks when I come back. And often it's to a group of people who are disengaged, who never heard of Congo or don't really know what's going on. And here we are, and I often, you know, bring out, okay, you know, contact my colleagues, who is the local member of Congress that we can go and, you know, try to set up a meeting with and get them to be active and pay attention and know that this is Congo DRC, not Congo Brazzaville, and, you know, where are we talking about? And here we are in a completely different scenario. Here, your member of Congress is your champion. Karen Bass has done fantastic work in this area. And all of you have been active with Jewish World Watch and the other organizations here in the area for a number of years. We worked together in the Enough Project and Jewish World Watch on the conflict minerals bills in Congress, on trying to get support for your bill, Congresswoman Bass, HR 131, trying to get then Senator, now Special Envoy Feingold appointed. So we're really starting to move the needle on Congo. There's clearly so many other things to be done, but you know, I'm really excited to be here with all of you and try to move things forward in Congo. Based on my number of years working on Congo and on peace and conflict resolution in Africa, I just wanted to say a couple things. Number one, I totally agree with what you said about Africa and Congo in particular, that we can't just see this as another crisis to put another Band-Aid on. This is a place of tremendous opportunity. This is the place that's, you know, one of the most richest places in the world with natural resources. And if those are used properly and invested in properly and making sure the revenues stream back to people actually on the ground, it can solve all of its own problems. It doesn't need any outside assistance at all. It's got tremendously talented people, as you've heard from the pastor. Congolese music is exported all over Africa and other places. Many of you know Kofi Olomide, Papa Wembe, you know, people who were heard all over the continent. And so, you know, and there's been a number of measures of progress seen in Congo over the past couple of years. Number one, people celebrated all over the streets of Eastern Congo late last year when the M23 rebellion, supported by neighboring Rwanda, unfortunately, was finally defeated and expelled from Congo. You know, my own colleague who was based out in Congo that Nam was going to see last week had his first beer in a couple of years. He was like, he was thrilled with this prospect. Since then, there have been 8,000 fighters from other armed groups who've defected. That's also, you know, we're starting to see some progress. There's now a peace process finally starting to address the root causes of the war, and that needs to go further. But the fact that we have the highest level ever special envoys from the United States and the United Nations, and Russ Feingold and former President of Ireland, Mary Robinson, who were helping to work on this peace process, offers tremendous opportunity. And as the Congresswoman mentioned, Angola is helping lead some of those discussions. And thirdly, we're starting to make some progress on the funding of these armed groups. There have been numerous peace processes before tried for Congo, and many of them have failed time and time again because the warlords would simply turn around and make millions and millions of dollars from minerals that go into our cell phones and our jewelry. We call them conflict minerals, and many of you have been working on this issue to help the situation. So the situation today is really improving on conflict minerals. We're actually in the process of just publishing a study on this issue, but following the legislation that Congress passed 4 years ago as part of the Dodd-Frank reform, 67%, 2/3 of what we call the 3T mines are now conflict-free. 5 years ago, the UN group of experts reported that nearly every mine in eastern Congo is controlled by a military group. Today, that is not the case. There's still a lot of areas that need to be improved, and gold is an area that we need to target, but that is a measure of progress. So, what can we do now? Obviously, the war is still ongoing. Congo is still occupying, those bottom of the charts on all the different indices, the corruption, the human development. So what do we need to do now? There are a number of ways to help and continue what you all are doing here. Number one, supporting efforts on the ground, as the pastor mentioned, supporting groups like Action Kivu, who are helping people on the ground, but also, you can be a part of helping change the policy. If the United States and our companies are engaged in a positive, responsible, transparent way, we could see quite a lot of transformation. So I've got a couple of specifics, so get your pens and paper out. So number one, we got to make our electronics companies behave in a responsible way. Any electronics company announced that it was making the first fully conflict-free product, and some of those minerals were sourced from Congo. Well, that's got to expand. It can't just be one company. If one company's doing something, what's the rest of the industry doing, right? So where's Apple? Where's Samsung? I don't know the make of your phone. Is it a BlackBerry? Is it a Nokia? What are those companies doing? So this week we're actually going to be starting a new action. Next week. We'll be starting a new action. I believe it's a week from yesterday. So next Tuesday to ask all of our electronics companies to make this fully conflict-free product with clean minerals from Congo, so that companies can invest responsibly and transparently, which is more or less required of them because of Dodd-Frank. Number two, we need to ask Special Envoy Feingold to go further in what he's doing. He's made a lot of progress, for sure, and he's not going to be there forever, so we have to take advantage of this moment that he will be there. So number one, we've got to ask him to seriously press the Congolese government to go after those remaining armed groups. There's some hesitation on the part of the government to go after some of the groups, and it's particularly important to go after the FDLR, and not just in a military way, but the demobilization programs, etc. Number two, to press the government to make the economic reforms necessary that will enable a transparent, responsible business, so that the wealth and the revenues can translate to the people on the ground, particularly for gold. That's the one really outstanding mineral that needs to be worked on. And number three, absolutely 100% support what you said about the election. Those elections need to be held. There's a lot of hesitation going on right now in Congo as to whether they will be held or not. And frankly, there was a constitution written. Everybody agrees on it. All the parties signed up. The president signs up, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the air as to whether he will try to change the Constitution entirely to run again. If we want this country to move forward, it's got to be in a democratic, peaceful transition. And just lastly, I want to introduce a new idea today, so nobody's heard it before. So I'm not repeating myself. Congressman Bass is probably so tired of hearing from the Enough Project, so all of our ideas. So I think one other thing that we need is some support to local communities, and I'd like to call for the setup by electronics companies, by USAID and the US government, of an entrepreneurship for Congolese people on the ground. Entrepreneurship for microfinance, to support agriculture, to support better artisanal mining that has helmets and boots and better safety conditions for miners and small businesses. People want to open groceries and butcher shops and that kind of thing. So those are my couple of ideas. I've probably gone way over 4 minutes. Sorry. And if you want to sign up for other actions that we're working on, you can text the word Congo on your phone to 30644, and you'll get a message back, and you can stay as part of the conversation. Thank you so much.
I'd like like to invite Namahadi to give us a few comments.
So now it's up to me to bring up the rear on the timekeeping. But I did schedule myself last, so that's my fault. What I really want to talk to you all about, and Sasha kind of set me up perfectly here, is the idea of investment in Congo and real investment in Congo. And that investment is personal for all of us. Most of us in this room have been investing our time and energy for years to achieve new policies in Congo. The policies that are now allowing for a transparent mineral chain from Congo that I hope will encourage other companies other than Intel and some of the leading companies to source responsibly from the region, not just cut and run from the region. But Sasha's new idea of entrepreneurship in Congo is not a particularly new idea for Jewish World Watch. Heads up. We've been doing this for years. And in fact, one of the things that I'm most proud of what our community has brought to Congo through partnerships with organizations like Pastor Kasarika's organization, Africa New Day on the ground in Congo, through partnerships with organizations like Action Kivu and the Virunga National Park and many other organizations in Congo, is that we focus on investing in the local leadership in Congo, in people who have that spark of potential. You know, the ones that you know are going to set their minds to change something, and with just a little investment and support, really go off and do it. The projects that we support are incredibly entrepreneurial. They change women's lives, they change men's lives, they change the entire family structure and the entire community. And by and large, other than a few key programs that your support have funded, like the Chambucha Rape and Crisis Center, which could only be built by an international organization that had the capacity to reach such a rural zone. All of our funding in Congo goes to small, local, community-based Congolese organizations, because we know that the people that are going to change Congo are not sitting up here and do not have my skin color or yours, but are Congolese themselves. That is where the change happens. Just recently, and one of the reasons that I'm so excited about the Electrify Africa Act and that initiative, even though the Electrify Africa Act doesn't focus on Congo specifically, it focuses on 6 different countries, but the model of the Electrify Africa Act is such that if we invest in the infrastructure that these countries deserve, then those brilliant minds in these countries will take that opportunity and build innovative new programs that fit their society. We need to stop thinking of Congo as the developing world versus the developed world, and start thinking of lean economies versus fat economies. We're a fat economy. We get lazy. We rely on our cell phones for everything. The internet is everywhere. When you are in a lean economy, you are scrappy. You think of new and innovative ways of doing things, which is why, for example, in Kenya, where there weren't landlines at all, the second that cell phone technology happened, they skipped straight from electronic banking, forget electronic banking, and went straight to mobile banking. And that was a Kenyan innovation. That's a lean economy innovation, because that's the innovation that happens when you have to figure out how to maneuver with what you have. And with that level of investment, providing the infrastructure that can let that investment jump forward is crucial. And this is what we can do in Congo. So we, with our advocacy, support the macro infrastructure development, encourage multinational companies to invest the right way in Congo to build sustainable energy in Congo. There's an initiative now through the Virunga National Park and the Virunga Fund to increase the amount of power in North Kivu from, right now there's 3 megawatts of power in all of North Kivu, a giant province in eastern Congo, and they're planning to increase it to 80 megawatts of power by the end of 2020, all based on hydroelectric power, the natural resources, sustainable resources that exist in Virunga National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So with that level of advocacy and investment on the macro level, which comes from our constant pushing on, Congresswoman Bass and her colleagues in the House, which we'll keep doing because chutzpah comes with the activist territory.
Open door.
Good thing. Big mistake. That kind of investment on the macro level, and then additionally our investment in local leadership and in the individuals that really can change their communities on the grassroots level. This is an incredible partnership and an incredible gift that we can give, and a gift that we can give responsibly. So when Michael said that we're not out to save Congo, we mean it. We're out there to partner and to walk with Congo, not for Congo. So that is where I